Small Business Saturday.
Welcome to Small Business Saturday's video series with your host and my husband.
And my dad, Aaron Montgomery.
Join the conversation.
Let's talk some business.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome into Small Business Saturday. I hope everybody's having a great start to your Saturday morning here. I am extremely excited to welcome in my guest here in just one moment, Mike Wilkerson, who you guys have heard before on the Small Business Saturdays podcast. He's my podcast guru, my go-to guy. In fact, he helps make sure that Small Business Saturdays gets out to the podcast arena. But the thing you might not know about Mike is he is also a wealth of knowledge when it comes to marketing. And we were having a conversation at a lunch we were at and talking about one of the Small Business Saturdays episodes. And he's like, yeah, there's so much to unpack there. So I kind of cornered him and said, well, then guess what? You got to come on my program and help me unpack that. So we're going to do that in just one second. Before we do that, I want to just share, we're into the new year here, and I want to just share real quickly some new things going on over at our success group. A little quick video that we got here that will give us a little bit of information, and then we will grab Mike and dive right into after the marketing. What do we do? What are the expectations? How can we amplify it? Just really getting into the weeds on, how do we make our marketing really work for us as opposed to kind of being the ones that always are having to market. So anyhow, we'll get to that in just one moment, but let's see a little bit about what's happening new with our success group in 2022 here. All right. Well, it's got a catchy beat that you can dance to. And so if you're not already part of the Our Success Group community, head over to oursuccessgroup.com/members and you can check out all the details, or just let me know. I'm happy to share anything that I can with you about how we might be able to support and help your business here in 2022 and beyond. So without further ado, let me bring in my good friend, Mike Wilkerson here. Let me click the right button. There we go. Good morning, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us, and great to have you.
Good morning, Aaron. I often wonder if I am always going to be accompanied with the Darth Vader Imperial theme march when I walk into a room, but I could do that song too. That's great.
Okay,
I have to tell you, I think I just hurt my neck bouncing my head to what you just played. That was awesome.
Nice. Well,
it was great. It was great.
A little bit of energy to get us going here this morning.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
good.
I love that. That's great.
Good. Well, hey, Mike, thank you so much for being here. Can you maybe just give folks a quick rundown? I know you've been on here before, but I'd love to have you share kind of what you do and what's in your wheelhouse. And I know you've got all sorts of amazing things going on right now, but just give us the elevator pitch real quick.
Sure. I have been podcasting since 2005. I help a variety of people from all walks of life find and discover what are their light bulb moments inside of either their careers, their perspectives, their skill sets, and then I share it with audiences online. Podcasting has always been about captured perspective.
Yeah. Podcasting
is storytelling, and as soon as people start to understand the bridge that happens there, the faster they can become customers of mine, and I can help them online. You mentioned that I've been in marketing a while. It's been a while now, almost 25 years total. And finding the numbers, the data, and the details is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today inside of your program. So thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, this is great. So as I kind of mentioned there, Mike, this kind of stemmed from some comments that you and I had kind of going back and forth. And if I remember right, we were talking about the episode that was great alternatives to paid online advertising. And we were able to get into some good alternatives there. But I loved, like I said, we got into talking about what was beyond that. What are your what do you do after that? So first off, if anybody wants to go check that out, they can do so from the Podcasters Matrix, which you can just find over there at smallbusinesssaturdayspodcast.com. But I'd love to kind of share some thoughts here, both of us, but diving into what your thoughts are on what are the challenges that people might have right after they implement their latest marketing or advertising campaign. I don't know, to me, it kind of is that instant gratification conundrum, so to speak. So what are some of your thoughts on that, Mike?
There's no question that as business of all types continue to make things easier, and in just a few clicks, you too can insert whatever the solution is. Well, that's very sexy. And a lot of businesses really, really like that a lot. Yeah. The problem is that it instantly allows you to hurdle all of the things that you should be including inside of a work process that is a checklist for success inside of almost every project that your business will partake in. Yeah. In particular, inside of advertising, where sure, you can have ideas and you can provide a litany of ideas. You can even enact the ideas in just a few clicks. You can do it too. But the pre part and the after part are easily as important as what happens during everything inside of advertising and marketing. And that's really what we're focusing on today.
Yeah.
If I had to give you the overarching what's going to happen today, I hope that we'll ignite that little pilot light in everybody's concept of before you do a sale or an effort inside of your organization or business, and after you do an effort inside of your organization or business, you're remembering to do those steps too. Yeah. Because watching the little bar graphs and pie charts and all the other stuff that you can enact inside of today's modern day marketing is awesome. Yeah. And people love the quick read. Man, that's cool. But there's a whole lot more detail that needs to go into it if you're going to have a continuing, ongoing series of successes inside of marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mike, where do you see people maybe kind of run into those challenges then, right? I mean, we do the marketing effort, like you said, it's easy to do for, anybody can do it. And when we kind of get into that, we send out the email blast, for example, or something along those lines. And then, we kind of wash our hands of it and then are moving into the next thing. But what are we missing in that end step?
Yeah, this came up recently inside of a discussion. There's a podcast we're conjuring called the Podcast Gauntlet, where my co-host and I are actually going to be digging into some of the concepts that are inside of podcasting, but really it kind of applies to a lot of what we're talking about today. Yeah. And one of those is you want a sale to be successful. You'll put it on a platform, let's say Facebook, and you'll hit all the cool buttons and you'll make the art and you'll stick it in there. And then the period of when you want to be selling things ends. And then you get your quick snapshot and inside the dashboard of whatever. And you look at it and go, interesting. And then you never look at it or think about it again. And that is the biggest problem. Being able to analyze what might have went right or what might have went wrong will instantly help propel you into the next effort. And I see so many businesses that completely forget about that because either the money is spent or they've run out of time or they're a one-man shop and they can't do it all themselves, which is super common. So when we start piling on the priorities or the responsibilities inside of a priority ladder, I get it. I understand that things are going to fall off the priority ladder because other things are more important and need to be achieved. Yeah. But you always have to remember to come back to some of the fundamentals, and that's to review what you just got done doing so you can see where it worked, but also where it didn't. Yeah. Because that's what's going to help guide you into the next step of whatever you're going to be doing, whether it's an online ad, if it's a local in-person event, which are becoming more frequent now, asterisk. Yeah. But all of those things need to be looked at, tended to, but most importantly, tended to at all, because many people forget about that completely.
Yeah. And Mike, I think that the really important piece to pull out of that is, like you said, it's going to guide you into your next steps. But the other thing I find that by going back and reviewing and trying to understand what that data actually means for me or my business or that kind of scenario is, it also helps me be more efficient. It also helps me spend less money. If I'm doing, for example, a Facebook ad and I see what worked and what didn't work, well, I'm going to stop doing the things that didn't work and then in turn stop spending that money on things that don't work. So, any other things inside of that, like when you're reviewing stuff, is there something specific that you're really kind of looking for? Obviously, we're talking about a pretty wide range of things, but in general, when you see numbers after the fact, what are you kind of looking for?
I always try to point people towards the aspects that typically become the sexy parts of what happens inside of doing something.
Yeah.
There are pieces of that effort that you really, really enjoy participating in. And then there's the stuff you hate. And everybody tends to scoot past the stuff that you hate because it takes time. There's more effort. You can't look at a quick dashboard to get something finished quickly. And, well, I think I'm just going to focus on this part. We'll worry about the rest later.
Yeah.
And the problem is that over a period of time, we'll worry about the rest later, those instantly stack up and appear faster in the negative on the priority ladder than anything you will ever do that is super sexy and garners your attention all the time.
Yeah.
It's far more important to try and look at the entire picture of what you're doing, because it's gonna dig directly into what you're talking about, which is the finding the pieces that you not only like to do, but are going to help you propel your business, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, I think, as you know, Mike, the folks that are probably tuning in here are people that are in that garment decorating, maker space. And so there's a lot of creativity that comes with that kind of a space, which is awesome and why I love it so much. But then, like you said, some of the things that aren't as sexy aren't as, gets our creative juices flowing, the looking at the numbers, the data, that kind of stuff. It is important. And then, Mike, I think it also talks a lot about then what you're doing on the front end of this effort. When you're setting this up, you mentioned that earlier on too, is that the before and after pieces might be as important. And honestly, Mike, I'd go so far as to say they're probably more important than the actual during.
They really are.
Yeah.
What I'd like to transition to especially is in-person events. A lot of people are under the impression that when you go to, say, a convention, I know that you go to a variety of conventions during the year, both in our local area, but also very remotely. You fly all over the place. When you go to those events, there's a series of things that you have already put into the what you need to do list, and that's awesome. I love checklists. Checklists are a piece of life, and I encourage everybody to try and get into them because they will help you. They will help you for the most part. They can also be a large hindrance if you get too small, too granular.
Yeah.
But they do help in general. The problem is that everybody makes the listing of, okay, well, we've got our booth and here's what we're going to do. Nobody does the what we need to do before checklist. But more importantly, nobody does the what we do after checklist. And again, to go back to in-live person events, what is your plan after you get back and you've had a good night's sleep and you get back in the office with the information and experiences that you had at the convention?
Yep.
Because I'm telling you, it is the bane of sales existence. Nobody wants to go back and parse anything after the show. They just want to move forward and, oh, wait a minute, I had 3 great leads, so let's focus on that. And that's great. I want you to focus on sales, but I also want you to focus on the experience both before and after, because the whole picture is what's going to help you build the next greater effort that's going to propel your business.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like you said, having that reflection again, not only just getting back and, okay, I had 3 great leads, let's make sure that we're really contacting them, but the bigger picture. Okay, I got 3 great leads. How do I next time get 5 great leads? What was it about those leads that we were able to, go, yeah, that's a great lead. And how do I attract more of those people? And, what events are going to have more of those kinds of people? And breaking all of those little bits and pieces down after the fact, like you said, is going to really make that next effort more valuable. And honestly, I truly believe that it's going to save you more time and money and energy because you're being more efficient. You're the next one's better. So you don't have to, hustle so hard, so to speak, or whatever in that regard. So, I think that's a huge part of this, Mike. And I'm so glad that you're sharing that with our audience here, that they can because I hear this from me a lot, and I always love having a different perspective, because maybe the change of how you're saying it might help people go, oh yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. There's a piece also, it just so happens that inside of this video stream, we happen to be on cameras. Yeah. And the value there is that you can actually see what's going on, and you can see our expressions and what we're paying through inside of this experience. I would tell everybody else that remembering to record what goes on inside of your event is also equally important. Awesome. Really, that means making relationships with the people around you, so that, let's say you can, or have a relationship with the people that are across from you at a convention. Well, wouldn't it be cool if you could put, say, I don't know, a GoPro on a camera that's watching your entire booth the whole time in some sort of time lapse to see where people congregate inside of your booth or don't? Yeah. That's another piece. There are so many things that you can dissect and try to find value in, especially inside of a convention area where you have limited space. You've been to a variety of conventions. You've been at the convention where you have your 6-foot table that sucks, right?
Yep.
You've also probably been at one where somebody's got like a 20 by 25 space where it's reasonably robust. There's some sort of display that's going on. There's a variety of materials, maybe even a table, the table that's got snacks on it or candy or whatever else. Being able to parse all that data and try and figure out what helps lure people into the fray is at least as important as what you're going to actually say to them when they get there. That really is one of the concepts of one of the services I offer, called the Podcast Bug. The Podcast Bug is a 1974 custom Super Beetle with a recording studio built into it. Well, and I contract that out to people that want to capture the stories and perspectives of both their customers, but also the people at conventions, so that they can have content to then propel inside of their podcast. Well, when that goes to one of their booths, you kind of know where everybody is going to go. They're going to go to the incredibly, what the hell is that thing that's sitting inside of a booth? And it's a 1974 custom Super Beetle with a recording studio built into it. That's what.
Nice.
Yeah.
So does that Super Beetle have can it make it to Vegas?
It can. It's actually, the last show we were at was in Dallas for Fincon, and that was spectacular. We captured almost 300 different programs from a variety of people around the world, actually. It was the world's largest financial blogger and vlogger convention, and it was spectacular. I'll make sure we include some links in the show notes.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. As you were talking about the bug, it sparked something. I don't know what the realities of it are, but you know what? I'm going to put it out there to the people that are running this event, the Printing United event out in Las Vegas. So anyhow, stay tuned. More on that later.
If you're looking for something that'll turn heads, shove a show car Volkswagen Beetle with these spidery arms hanging out the front of it, and something will change instantly. We'll include links for that inside the show notes. Again, for those that are curious, you can go check it out at podcastbug.com.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, as you were telling the story about the different size venues and whatnot, it reminded me of one of my experiences. So yeah, I have been doing trade shows all over this industry for a long time, and have been responsible for trade shows for a number of different companies. One of the companies early on in my career, we had a 30 by 40 booth that we also then put a second story. We basically had, it was crazy.
Killer. That's great.
Yeah, we were selling a $250,000 piece of equipment. So, we kind of had to have the space, and then plus but in hindsight though, again, going back and reviewing all of that, and we took this, we probably spent somewhere north of $300,000 to be at that event. And in hindsight, and looking and reviewing it, the whole 2-second stories thing seemed really cool. Never got used. It just, over the span of the 3 days that we were at that event, probably had like 5 people go up in it. It was supposed to be like a meeting area and stuff like that. And it just, didn't work. So that's what we're talking about here for you guys, is to take a look at that, whatever scale you're at, and go, okay, let's break this down and say, okay, what works? Like you talked about with the GoPro idea, just to get that idea of like, okay, as people walk by and they look at your booth, what is stopping them from turning and coming in, right? You can kind of see that. Maybe it's because you're standing out front with your back to them, or there's too many people clogging and you've got too much stuff out front and you want people to come in. I mean, you can understand and learn all of this stuff by, like we're talking about here, what you're doing after the marketing. So thank you, Mike, for sharing all of that.
Yeah, there's a wonderful program called Bar Rescue. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but inside of that, there's a gentleman named John Taffer. And John Taffer has been a staple inside of the entertainment industry. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he's in Vegas. And one of the things that he loves to talk about inside of his redos of bars that are failing and terrible, and then he makes them not terrible, are something called butt bumpers. And you say, well, what is a butt bumper? How could butt bumpers possibly be mentioned inside of my program, Mike? The answer is butt bumpers corral and funnel people so that when you're in a place, there is a concept to the madness inside of, say, a bar to help propel the people like cattle through to where you want them to go. And if you're not doing that inside of your very small 6-foot booth, or inside of your massive 2-story, I've got a truck and or a podcast bug in it area, then you're not planning correctly and you're not going to get all the yield you can from whatever you got planned.
Yeah, that's definitely important. And yes, we don't think about that. You look at a program like that, and to be able to understand, hey, what can I take from that I can then improve in my business? I love that we're correlating those things, and I hope that the listeners here start correlating the things they see out there, Bar Rescue, whatever. I mean, even like I watch a lot of the home improvement type shows, and it's amazing what you can kind of go, oh man, you know what? I'm not really looking to do that in my home, but boy, would that look cool as a backdrop, or would that look cool in a trade show booth or something like that? So I love that.
This brings up another experience. I originally got my start inside of entertainment review, and we still review movies and television series all the time. And one of the things that's been brought up recently with the advent of Cobra Kai coming in originally on YouTube Red, but then also now just coming into the mainstream via Netflix, is the original Karate Kid movie was where my very first adult light bulb moment occurred. And everyone will remember this, at least if you've seen the original Karate Kid. If you haven't, please go watch it because you're far too young.
Exactly.
Anyway, when you watch that movie, one of the things that you get, or at least that I got, and was my first adult light bulb moment, was Daniel wants to just bag on Mr. Miyagi because, my God, he's just making me do all of his chores and crap that he doesn't want to do. He's just leveraging all that crap on my shoulders. Well, yeah, that's a piece of it. But he's also training you and giving you the muscle memory and the skill set and the understanding of order of operations. Yeah. And what you're talking about inside the programs that you were just talking about is exactly that, where Gordon Ramsay is one of my favorites to watch, not because I like to go and get in people's faces and tell them how their chicken is raw. That's not why. It's because what he is offering in a very, it's kind of the steel gauntlet inside of a velvet glove, right? Yeah. Where he's offering this uppercut, but he's offering it because it's going to help you. Yeah. And you will garner those ideas out of those programs, even if they're little tiny little bits and pieces. You're absolutely correct. And it's why I would love to go back and review those programs too in a perspective review, because you'll get something from it. Yeah. There will be a little seed moment inside of there that you say, that's a really good idea. I need to consider that inside of my business, or implement this inside of my restaurant, or my design process inside of my business.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mike. Well, let's keep moving here. I've got some other ground that I'd like to cover. Plus, we have some of our live listeners here that have a couple of comments, questions that I'd like to just share briefly. We've got somebody that says, what would be important items to review for someone who is limited on time, maybe the most important data? So, Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but my initial reaction to that is where this comes into play is what you're doing at the beginning of it. What's your plan? What are you trying to get out of this marketing effort, the event, the Facebook post, the email blast, whatever? That's going to determine what the most important items to review are. We recently had a training inside of our success group that was about what business metrics to measure. And we talk a lot about the vanity metrics, what things to kind of stay away from potentially. And a lot of the vanity metrics might be an actual good metric for somebody else. But if that's not what you're after, then that could be a vanity metric for you. Number of Facebook likes, how many people came in and signed up for the freebie inside of your booth. Is that really getting you to where you want to go? So Mike, what maybe are some important data points from your perspective?
Well, sure. If we were going to run down a chalk list, the first one I would start with is have any plan at all. Because I'm telling you, when we look at conventionery, in particular ongoing conventionery, and Aaron, you know this, and you've probably fallen into the sad gauntlet every now and then.
Yep.
Which is, oh my God, the date's coming up. What do we got to do? And you start running around like a chicken with your head cut off, and you completely forget about all the planning stuff because it's too late. It's next week. We don't have time for that.
Yep.
And I can't begrudge people that need to fall into that because the planning just wasn't there. I get it. Everybody is busy.
Yep.
But start planning now. Have any plan. I have worked with and been a part of so many different companies that know a convention is coming. It's an annual thing, at least prior to COVID. It was an annual thing. They knew it was coming. They knew that there was an expense. The expense usually was accommodated for. But what was almost never accommodated for was any planning of any kind prior to the week before the event.
Yeah.
In many cases, days before the event. And if you do not pre-plan, you can expect exactly what you're going to get at the end.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, once we get past all of the you need to pre-plan before you do anything, once we get past that, there's a variety of things that are a lot of fun to try and contemplate. One, manpower. What are you going to do in regard to manpower for the event? Is it only you? How are you going to take your lunch?
Yep.
What are you going to do when you're 10 deep at the table of whatever you've gotten in front of everybody that everybody is standing there? What are you going to do to engage those people? What are they going to take? Are they going to take anything? Are you going to give them something so that they can have some bauble to remember you?
Yep.
Well, what inside of the service experience that you're offering at your booth or at your event are you actually giving to them so that they'll remember you the next time that comes up?
Yep.
A lot of people forget that when you're inside of a cone of business, it's great to be inside of the cone of business, but there's something far more important than only having a brand and then having the cone inside of business. And it's about being able to get to the people that are outside of the cone of business that might want to use your product.
Yep.
That's something that a lot of people don't even contemplate before they go. More importantly, after they go. When you go back and you look at all of the things that you have or haven't done inside of the show, what were the things that were fun? Everybody gets to that part pretty quickly. But what were the things that were a drudgery, and how can you remove them from the workflow inside of your experience?
Yep.
Because the faster you start deducing those things, that instantly turns the pie chart where there's this giant swath that you don't like into something that you also like.
Yeah.
And now the whole experience becomes robust, and the data that you collect inside of the whole thing, that starts to propel your business, and that's key.
Yeah, I agree. That's perfect, Mike. So another comment that we got here, not directly related to what we're talking about, but in a roundabout way, a lot of our customers actually are the ones that don't plan for their events, and they'll show up to us and say, "Hey, I need 100 logoed shirts for my event. Oh, and by the way, it's this weekend, or it's next week," is what Wendy had there. So
and
like you said,
what I have to give a total tip of the nod to your industry, especially this last, let's just call it 2 years, is that with supply chain problems and just the fact that things are just harder to get and more expensive, especially if you start adding on the, oh my God, I need it right now factor.
Yeah.
A total tip of the hat to all of you that are actually doing this and pulling it off. There's a local gentleman that I work with. His name is Jonathan Tynes. And Jonathan has a business called Kickprint over at kickprint.com.
Yep.
And the explosive growth that he has experienced right now is amazing. But what is more amazing is he will fall on his sword when he needs to. And understanding that you cannot be all things to all companies all the time is very important. especially inside of an industry like yours where it literally is about resources that very often you do not have.
Yeah.
And so being able to build in some sort of window or a solution if things all fall apart, dude, that's on a checklist, and it's something that people don't even think about, much less have on a checklist usually.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Love it. Excellent, Mike. All right. Well, I want to kind of keep rolling forward here, talking a little bit more about the content idea, the fact that it's about storytelling. You know this very well. You know that it's about the story. It's about kind of you always say it really well, and I'm probably going to mess it up, but that capturing of the perspective, I believe, is how you phrase it. But it's kind of engaging your ideal customer is what's happening. So a lot of times that content creation part can become pretty overwhelming for folks. You know, what am I going to say? How am I going to do it? What story do I even have to tell? So maybe, Mike, help us kind of dig into, are there some tools? Are there some ways to, maybe utilizing automation or content repurposing or just any ideas that you have to kind of reduce that overwhelm when it comes to content creation?
Yeah, this pops up really often. I work with a lot of law enforcement representatives, in particular police dispatchers and local law enforcement.
Yeah.
And one of the things when I approach them about doing podcasts like whatcopswatch.com or digitallydispatch.com is, dude, there's so many stories. Where do you want me to start? And the answer is, I just want you to start. The compartmentalization of each of the ideas is something that I, as a producer, am supposed to be helping you with. Yeah. So we just need you to turn on the faucet and then capture it. For those of you that aren't yet utilizing my services, which, by the way, you can connect with me over at twoguystalking.com, if you're not going to do that, then what you need to do is you need to compartmentalize what you're doing. Each of the components of your business is easily at least one volume or a chapter inside of a series of storytelling elements that will instantly help people understand not only what you're doing, but what services you can provide to them in whatever they're doing inside of their own business. That compartmentalization, that's what's going to help you reduce all of the stress and, oh my God, now what do I do? When you can start taking this giant chunk and parsing it out into little bits and start chopping away at it.
Yeah.
It's I do it regularly because I love having the big idea. Paying off the big idea, however, it comes down to work. Yeah. and to get the work done, you've got to start chopping it up into bits and seeing what you can do right now versus, oh my God, how am I going to get this juggernaut of a thing done when there's so much to be done? Well, you've got to break it up into smaller parts. Yeah. So the answer to your question, Aaron, is, again, if you've got all of these things to share, well, you've got to start with one. What is the first one going to be? What I do traditionally inside of podcasting is I start with something I call the 101. And that has nothing to do with it being the first thing. It has everything to do with being the fundamentals, like in college when you take a 101 course.
Yeah.
And it's why your program or why your business exists. And what I always try to encourage people in that is that it is about sharing who you are. It's also about sharing what and why you're doing it, but it needs to be genuine.
Yeah.
It needs to not be a bunch of flowery words that are read off in a paragraph. It needs to be you sharing your perspective and your story, because that's what engages.
Correct. Yep. And your story, like you said, it's got to be authentic. It's got to be what you do, but really like why you do it, and what is it that you're solving. And this is where you start attracting your ideal customers, because what you're solving is going to be what your ideal customers need, and that way you're working on the things that you want to be working on, and not working on the things that don't bring you joy and happiness and profit. So I think there's
a component inside of your industry that, and it's not just your industry, it's every industry. The faster that technology starts to provide us with all these cool things you can get right now on the internet because of Amazon.
Yeah.
One of the I won't call it one of the largest problems, but it's one of the largest hurdles that everybody has to face is if you're in the wheelhouse of making really decent money at X, and somebody asks you, that's pretty cool. Hey, do you do Y? Sure. because you can be in a matter of minutes by going to Amazon and ordering whatever piece of equipment or information or course or whatever the hell you're going to order.
Yep.
That's totally true. But do you need to be doing that?
Yep.
Because in the span of time that you need to take on something new, have the expense of providing for the equipment or the gear, the learning curve that's going to be inside of whatever you're going to do, no matter how smart or really easy to take on new things you think you are, there is a window there that instantly starts to close the other window that's making regular money. If you're a smaller shop, this is super vital to understand on the front end. Because what will eventually happen is you're like, well, hey, you do X really well. I'm curious. Y, Z, H, I, J, and K, can you do those too? You know what? I can.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yep.
Because as soon as you start doing all of the things that you are pretty sure you can do, all of the windows for potential inside of all the other things start to close quickly unless you can expand your workforce and give it to trusted people that will do the services at least as well as you do or better. And that's where I think all of us fail inside of business. I know I've had my failures with that often.
Me too.
And it's not because of the trusted people. It's because I opened the windows too fast.
Yep. No, I think, and those of you that aren't able to see the video side of this, I'm sitting here smiling like ear to ear, the biggest smile I've had in a while, because this is exactly the point that I try to make to folks. When you're looking at that, like you said, that X, that's the thing you need to be focused on and stay focused on that, because then when you start going after Y, A, B, C, H, I, whatever, again, that window on X starts closing, and now that opportunity is no longer there. Your focus is spread out so far, so now you're not really all that good at any of these things, and you need to be really great at one thing and then build from there. Like you said, trusted people, more resources, kind of getting into that process where you're really efficient with X. Then you can start taking on Y. And I think that's such a huge thing for people to understand. Like you said, smaller businesses, especially because, gosh, we got to grow. We need to take on as much business as we can. That we think that's kind of the natural instinct. And it's not a natural instinct to start saying no to work when you really need it. You need to pay those bills and things like that. But the reality is, like you said, the more we focus on things that aren't the X, the less likely we're going to be very successful at the X side of it. And then we're spread out so thin. So the kind of the saying I always go with, Mike, is when you try to be all things to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody. And that's
incredibly well said. There's another component inside of that where it is terribly frustrating when, again, probably for those of you that are watching this in replay, you've probably seen or been interrupted by an ad that is, you can 10x your business tomorrow. And, well, you can. Asterisk. Because you really can't. Nothing happens instantly like that, and it's terribly frustrating when somebody is purchasing to insert name of package or course where they too can learn how to insert whatever the cool thing was, and they can't do it, and so they'll go and either grab me or you or someone else and say, would you pretty please help me do this? And the answer is, well, what was the goal if you did know how to do this when you were done?
Yeah.
The answer is you don't just instantly make more money, it's more work. When you 10 times something, well, there's 10 times more work. I mean, it's not, something doesn't just instantly happen. It's not magic.
Yeah, correct. I love it. And at the end of the day, those folks are just really good at marketing, and that's what you need to study what they're doing.
Absolutely right.
Become really good at marketing, right?
Yeah. For what it's worth, those people are the A+ earners on the front end of planning before selling something.
Correct.
Because they have planned exactly what they're going to do when they pitch exactly what's going on, but then also again after, because you bought it.
Yep.
And now it's time to roll in what you purchased. And
correct.
That's where the vast majority of people fail inside of just about every business, really.
Yeah, sure. For sure. So, Mike, I want to go back to something you said early on at this segment here where we're talking about this area. You talked about, what's the first thing to do? Do something, start capturing, start, creating and things like that. And that's another part that just really stands out for me is we just have to take action and then start, like you said, chunking it down from there. Get something going. people that know me know that I have not been podcasting as long as you, but I was fortunate enough to get started in 2013 with my Two Regular Guys program. And, I look back at the early stuff and I go, wow, that is embarrassing. But you know what? It's where we started. So it's not embarrassing. I'm actually very proud of it because we've been able to kind of keep it going. And, I would say that we're successful at what we've been trying to accomplish with Two Regular Guys, and we'll continue to do that. But it all started with just saying, you know what, let's do this. I had no idea how to create a podcast. If you remember when you and I first met, some of the questions I was asking you, I'm surprised we're still friends, but
you're talking about content collection in the past. Let me dive back for a moment also, because there's a couple of things that have come up recently that really help. It helps inspire me.
Yeah.
You can imagine how almost 17 years now of content. How do you store all of that exactly? And how do you library it for everybody to go and listen to all of it right now? And when I look back at almost now 80 different programs across thousands of episodes, I'm like, the library-ness of that alone is mind-blowing.
Yeah. And
so being able to go back and parse the most important parts backwards is a very interesting stair step for me because, of course, I want to hit, where is the all button? I want to be able to just hit the all button and it's all ready right now for everybody. How do I do that?
Yes.
And there is no all button. It is a process. And again, it's about that chunking part. But where I was going is when you go back and look at what you did and how you did, you have to remember that it's all a spectrum of how you're building. So you can go back and you see what you did wrong, but also how you have evolved inside of your business profile.
Sure.
And that's when you start to get that pride moment. And that's why I always tell people to go back and look at their previous stuff. Most people forget about it. They usually record it, and it's gone, it's out of mind, they never revisit it. Most importantly, they usually don't listen to their own content, which I think is a misstep.
Yep.
I'm not telling you to go and listen to every one of your shows every single day, but I am telling you to go back and revisit the things that you have done in the past regularly.
Yes.
Because you will learn things from previous experience or hearing something that you had captured inside of an interview or a direction that you wish you'd have gone back then that you can then do inside of something that you're doing now and garner all of that benefit now.
Yeah.
Perspective, again, podcasting is capture perspective, and the capture perspective of everything, whether it's my own programming or the podcast that I've helped capture across a variety of different peoples and skill sets. It's incredibly valuable, but you have to revisit it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's hugely important for people to note, to go back. And it's almost like we talk a lot about, planning for, 2022 or wherever you're at, that kind of thing. And it's, that is all part of that. We have to go back and understand what worked and figure out how to amplify that, and then also understand what didn't work so we can learn from that. Again, what I tell people is you can never be a failure unless you decide to quit, unless you decide to stop. Everything else is just a learning opportunity as long as you persist and keep moving forward. So I think that's a huge piece.
Yeah, there's something inside of, it's outside of the standard business profile, but it's evolving into a piece of my business. Our recent lunch where we talked about this topic is actually a good sample.
Yeah.
I have an effort called Charger Forward, and Charger Forward is a visit to my family vehicle. It's a 2018 Dodge Charger. And my family and I use it as a shuttlecraft to visit a variety of places around us. Sure. Yeah. We take photos with both the car and my family. We go inside of places and have something to eat or get their services, and then I review them. Yep. Well, I've started putting all of this inside of Google, and I've just recently celebrated my 6 millionth photo view inside of the Google cone. Now, I've only been doing that for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So, again, it's about building something where eventually what I'd like to do is I'd like to build everything I'm doing with Charger Forward into a much larger video series on YouTube. And I haven't done that yet. But I again, as it goes back to everything, I have started. I started with an Instagram presence, taking really great photos.
Yep.
Again, we'll leave show notes inside of the links here so people can go and see it.
Okay.
And my goal inside of that was to have 2022 followers inside of my Instagram feed for the launch of the new year. And if I'm not mistaken, as of today, I will be there.
Yep.
And so again, it's about having goals of any kind inside of a process that is a much larger picture. Creating an ongoing educational program about not only driver education, but education about being a smarter vehicle wielder is what I want to build with Charger Forward. And it's coming. It's just monumental. It is that juggernaut block we were talking about before.
Sure.
And so chopping away at it is great.
Yep. Well, Mike, I love your example. I'm going to share my example too, if that's okay with you. I'd like to. So this program specifically is a great example of that as well, because it does have both of those elements. It's got, what was my goal at the start of it, and then after, we would capture some and do some things, I would review and make adjustments. I'd look for feedback. And so anyhow, I'll be as brief as I can with this here. But when I first started doing Small Business Saturdays, my goal was just to be able to get the content that was in my head out of my head and into something where then I could break it down and use it to write articles or something like that. And so it was just a live video. And I would look back and go, okay, well, got to work on this, got to, improve this, do those things. And then I just kept kind of moving forward. And then I happened to be working on a project with you and the Two Regular Guys podcast, where I was doing some capture at your studio. And this program came up and you said, well, why don't you make this a podcast? And I'm like, because I'm not very smart. I don't know. And so it evolved into that. And so there was, again, okay, now there's a new goal to not only be able to parse the information that's in my head out into something that I can then use in different avenues beyond that. Now it's also a podcast to help people with their small businesses. And so that grew and evolved. And then we had another conversation where you were talking about, and that's kind of leads me where I want to head next, is how do we then take this stuff and make it more, the term that most people would use is evergreen, where we can use it across multiple platforms. We can chunk it down and use it as this, or use it as a blog, or use it as a insert whatever your potential effort is to use that information and content. So Mike, what's kind of your overall idea about that? Like you said, you've got all this content and you're doing all these different things with it. How do you kind of break that down into being able to use it over and over again? I'm
going to give you one recent sample and then one that's an ongoing sample. The most recent sample is my Two Guys Talking Crypto.com effort. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're creating content to talk about cryptocurrencies. Now, I realize when I say the word cryptocurrencies, 90% of your audience is probably dropped off the map. But the fact is that it is an emerging technology that has been around a while now. It's not something new. It's been around for a decade. And over a decade rather. And the people that have gotten on are benefiting from it wildly because they got on early. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get in and learn more about it and eventually earn something with whatever you want to do inside of cryptocurrencies. But the bottom line is that you have to understand it.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, then you will never get into it. That's why I created Two Guys Talking Crypto.com, is because I am not the master of everything inside of crypto. Far from it. I've only been involved for probably 12 weeks or so. But what I do inside of that program is I surround myself with people that are far more intelligent than I am inside of cryptocurrencies and the things that are impacted by cryptocurrencies. I have a conversation with them. We grab the stories, and guess what? Knock, knock, knock. That's the storytelling that engages you guys as listeners, because podcasting has captured perspective. Yeah. Okay? That's the first one. When we talk about that being evergreen, the most recent episode of that program, we just captured a bunch of the first volume of vocabulary words. Well, the vocabulary words inside of cryptocurrencies today are not going to be gone and passé in a month or a year or 5 years. They're all going to have a foundation. So they are evergreen content, even if you come back to it in 10 years. Now, the flip side of that is something like a movie, which we do something called a perspective review of feature films. You can check out all of our perspective reviews over at perspectivereviews.com. Perspective reviews are where we go back and we visit movies that are not recent. Yeah. This started again in my entertainment review, where we would do these reviews that, okay, well, movie's coming out on Friday, reviews got to be out on Wednesday. And then after Saturday, well, what is the review going to do? Because nobody cares anymore. And so when I saw that, I saw the need that I saw was you need to make it so that it's endearing no matter when you hear it.
Yeah.
And so I made the Perspective Review podcasts about movies that not only I love, but the people I bring in to review those movies also love.
Yeah.
And so the stories, the perspective, the money, the hype, whether it was a franchise and continued into sequels, all of those are things that engage people no matter when they hear it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the movie happened last year or we've done movies that are 30 years old. It doesn't make any difference if the content is endearing. So it's important to build your content so that it's not for only the event that's happening next week, Monday, or in 3 weeks, we're going to be at a convention and that's it.
Yeah.
Because that's not it. It needs to be a library entry in the ongoing legacy of your business, effort, or organization. And my opinion, if you're not doing that, you are not doing content creation correctly.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I think the real big takeaway, and lots of great takeaways there, but the real big takeaway for folks is, like you said, it's not just that thing. There is a bigger perspective that as a content creator, that's what your role is to give your perspective. The people that listen to this program regularly understand that a lot of what I talk about is mindset related. And a lot of that comes from my work that I get to do with the success principles. And what a lot of it becomes, I mean, heck, I go so far as occasionally I'll just play one of Jack Canfield's videos. It's a 5-minute video that we all get to hear together. Yeah. And then my point is, okay, I want to break this down. I want to give you my perspective of what that video means to me, and maybe how you can then yourself take that and use that in your own life. And so building those perspectives together is what, like you said, that's what draws people in. And that's the whole point of content creation, is to draw people into your circle so that then they're going to want to learn more. Okay, so that's great, Aaron. What else do you do? Oh, well, by the way, I run mastermind groups. We have an online training membership, for our listeners, oh, well, I can make those logoed shirts for you that you need for your trade show next year. And that's, I think, a big part of what marketing really is. I think marketing to a lot of people kind of gets this, like, that's how I sell my product. But that's not it at all. Marketing is how you introduce people to your company. The selling is a whole different segment of it. It's just kind of, in today's world, because of social media and whatnot, kind of feels like it's melded together, but they're really two different things. So, Mike, how do you take that a little further for me?
I just finished a career inside of a 23-year tech environment.
Yeah.
And one of the very frustrating pieces of really any career, it's not just that one, is that marketing is the creation of a relationship between you, your brand, and the customer.
Yes.
And the ongoing back and forth between what's supposed to be happening inside of that relationship. And if you are not regularly readdressing or reorienting yourself or having a discussion with the people that are your customers, this is where, again, I don't usually get into absolutes, but my opinion, you are not doing it right. And that doesn't mean that you need to have these verbose 5,000 paragraph messages to your constituency of customers regularly, but it does mean that you must reach out to them regularly. If you're not going to reach out to them regularly, what happens is they untether. They instantly unsubscribe. Will they instantly subscribe instantly? Instantly unsubscribe instantly? No. That's the neat part about, my opinion, email marketing, is that as long as you offer value, are the people instantly just going to disengage if they don't see an email from you in a couple of weeks? Absolutely not. Yeah. But if you provide them with valuable content, regardless of how regularly it comes out, they will stick around. This also bleeds specifically into podcasting and what we're going to be talking about inside of the podcastgauntlet.com programming, which is you must be podcasting weekly. No, you don't. You don't have to podcast weekly. You need to be podcasting and then releasing a program when it's ready, when it's good, when it's endearing. Because if all you're doing is pumping out content because it's the day and time of the week, it doesn't make any difference and it doesn't resonate. You've got to provide value inside of what you're making, as well as just making sure you hit the deadline of Thursday at 7:30 p.m. because my listeners demand it. That is one of the largest myths inside of podcasting, is that if you don't provide the show at 8:30 on the dot, well, then people are going to complain and unsubscribe.
That's right.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're going to be right there waiting for your next program because you have good programming.
Yes. If they're willing to unsubscribe over that, then you probably need to up your value, right? Up your content value for sure.
Well, no, you need a different listener.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I like that. Yes.
I listen to programming that I specifically do not agree with regularly, and it's because I want the light bulb moments. I want the what other people think, so that I can at least either think more about what I'm thinking or then share what I'm thinking, my perspective.
Sure.
Because again, it's shared and captured perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. All right, Mike, one last thing from a live listener here that nuts and bolts type of thing, but just kind of maybe your outlook and kind of where you've been and where you think you might go with this kind of thing. And then I think we'll wrap it up here for today. But Justa from Sweden says, how do you save content? What reader did you use 10 years ago? And what are you going to use in the next 10 years? So what's your thought there on saving content?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let's work it from. Or do you want to flesh it out some more for me? Or
yeah, I mean we can kind of flesh it out a little bit, but my understanding of it here, and Justa can correct us if we're wrong, but how are you kind of cataloging, keeping? You talked about all those thousands of different tools and pieces and sorry, not tools, but episodes and whatnot. What's your process for keeping track of all that?
Well, what we've done for Two Guys Talking is 2gtdatacore.com.
Okay.
That is our data core. And what was his name?
Justa.
Justa. The concept there is that is our data core. It's where all of the information lives.
Okay.
It's where a lot of information, there's thousands of episodes there. Is everything there? No, because we created on so many different platforms. That's one of the perils of getting into business and then jumping into platforms that you don't so wholly understand when you jump into them is that very often you have to pivot. And when you do pivot, often a lot of that content doesn't come at the same time. But if you're going to be capturing something and you want to share it publicly, that's one of the most important pieces, is to have, in my case, a website where all of that is saved off.
Yeah.
And being able to have that inside of a saved off library, I can't tell you the value of that, because I can go back to any one of the programs I have for, say, the last 9 or so years of my 17 years of podcasting.
Yeah.
And I can share all of it with you.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Mike. Awesome. All right, Mike. Well, before I let you get out of here, real quick, I know you mentioned we're going to get some links into the show notes and whatnot, but if people want to connect with you, learn about all the things that you've got going on, like I said, you're my go-to guy for a lot of things. So where can people connect with you at?
I always tell people to go to twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2guystalking.com. Use the contact form. I live and die by the contact form. It instantly helps me filter out the people I know that I want to talk about, but also a lot of the stuff I have just, there's no reason to jump into it because it's fluff.
Nice.
Now, for those of you that haven't discovered the advent of utilizing your website in a contact form for not only screening what is almost always trash content, but having that work inside of your marketing automation cone is incredibly valuable.
Nice.
Please use a contact form at your website and direct people to your website, because your website is where everybody should have it. It is that first hit of crack that should be being offered into your customer base. No question.
Totally. I love it. Mike, not only are you giving people a way to connect with you, but you're also giving them valuable, useful tips. So thank you very much, sir. Mike, been great. Thank you so much for your time today. Looking forward to catching up with you again soon. And thanks once again for being here.
It's always great to be with you, Aaron. I can't wait till the next time. And thanks again for helping me spread the word of twoguystalking.com.
Awesome. Have a great day, Mike. Awesome. Well, that was fantastic. I always love talking to Mike. He is such a wealth of information. And the whole idea of perspective and gaining a new perspective and gaining a different perspective, and that's why I also like bringing in Mike, because he's not directly in our space. He gets it. But he gets the whole big picture of things. So, and like I said, he's my go-to guy for a lot of things. So make sure you check what Mike's got going on over there at 2guystalking.com. Again, number 2guystalking.com. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Very excited to be able to share that with you. Lots of good tidbits and things inside of that. So go in and break those down. And then as you have questions or anything comes up for you, please feel free to reach out. You can see all of our contact detail if you're watching the live version down in the bottom, it would be left corner, I guess, of the screen. I'm like backwards. But if you can find us on Facebook at Our Success Group Pro, or you can find us on LinkedIn at company/Our Success Group, or even on TikTok. In fact, I've got to get 21-day challenge is happening right now. And so we've got to get that going for you guys over there. Let's see if I've got that picture here for anybody tuned in. I don't have that available right off the, yes, I do. Silly, Aaron. There you go. So we're into day 3. Today will be 10 push-ups, a 20-second plank, and 10 jackknife sit-ups. So hopefully any of you guys are joining in to the 21-day challenge. Just to, again, what's this to have to do with business? Not a lot, but it gets us into a habit. It gets us more energy. It gets us feeling better. It allows us to accomplish something each day. And so I think just improving our lives together is also a very worthwhile endeavor. So there you go. That's what's happening there. And so thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your Saturday. And we will talk to you guys next week. We're going to start getting into the fundamentals. I want to start off 2022 here with a kind of a deep dive into what I consider of the success principles are kind of 13 core fundamentals. So next week, we're going to be talking about empower yourself and getting into the concept of E+R=O, the 100% responsibility. You probably heard me talk about that before, but I want to really get into that. My take is it's your life. Don't give away your power by blaming something else, by complaining about something that you have no control over. Take control over it. I give Todd a hard time sometimes about, he'll say, oh, it's so cold and it's snowy and the weather's terrible here where I live. And I'm like, there's better weather somewhere else. Right. So, not that he can move tomorrow, but if he really doesn't like the weather that much, then you can move. And again, I'm just giving Todd trouble about it. And it's not in a negative fashion, but that's kind of the concept here is at the end of the day, what is it that you want? And then go out and create that for yourself. You have control over that. So it's very impactful and empowering. So that will be happening next week. And so I'm looking forward to starting that off with you guys. And, but without further ado, that's what I have for you today. So you guys have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will talk to you very soon.